Smoke claws at the night sky like desperate fingers, thick and acrid, carrying the bite of cedar and myrrh, twisted into something foul. At first you hear it, a low, hungry roar, like a beast chewing through wood and stone. Then come the sharp cracks of beams collapsing, and somewhere far off, the wail of a woman whose voice splinters and vanishes. Heat rolls in next, a living wall that sings the air before the glow stains the horizon crimson. Shadows writhe across the grand terrace. Colossal guardians, winged bulls with human faces, stand frozen in eternal watch, their carved eyes reflecting the inferno devouring the palace behind them. A soldier staggers past, arms overloaded with gold chalices that clink together like cruel laughter. His face is smeared with soot and something darker. He's smiling. He doesn't see you huddled in the alcove's gloom, silk robes torn, breath shallow, the weight of a lifetime of whispered obedience now ash in your throat. The air tastes of salt and fear, yours, and thousands like it. This is no storm sent by the gods. This is the end of a world, and it has only just begun. What follows is a story of fire and erasure, drawn from the bones of history. It touches violence against women, the machinery of conquest that turns human lives into spoils. These shadows are real, etched into clay tablets and scorched stone. If the weight grows too heavy, pause here. Honor that. For those who stay, we do not walk to gloat over ruin, but to see the gears that grind empires and souls into dust. Step away if you must. The story will wait. Pull back. Breathe. The year is 330 BCE. Winter still clings to the Zagros Mountains like a burial shroud. Alexander of Macedon is barely 30 years old, eyes as sharp as the spear he never sets down. He has shattered the Persian heartland, not with one decisive blow, but with a cascade. Issus in 333, where Darius fled like a hunted animal. Gaugamela the year before, where tens of thousands of Persian lives bought Alexander a road east. Now that road ends here. Persepolis is not just a city, it is the Achaemenid pulse, a terrace hewn from living rock, rising like a god's throne above plains that bloom gold in spring. Darius the Great carved it 2 centuries earlier as a monument to unity. Delegations from every corner of the empire ascending its stairs in eternal procession. Nubian gold bearers, Scythian horse archers, Ionians with fish and cloth. Unity rendered in stone. But unity demands tribute, and tribute breeds resentment. To the Greeks, Persepolis is whispered about as the city of the Persians, a glittering wound left from the old wars, when Xerxes burned Athens in 480 BCE, leaving the Acropolis in flames. This invasion is not conquest born of impulse. It is a machine, oiled by grudge and gold. Alexander's father, Philip of Macedon, forged the League of Corinth in 338, binding the Greek city-states into a vow of vengeance against the East. Athens' ruins still scar the soil. Thebes had risen and fallen under Alexander's heel only months earlier, its men slaughtered, its women sold like cattle. Persepolis looms as the final ledger. 120,000 talents of silver and gold lie stacked in its vaults, enough to fund a decade of war. Alexander's men, ragged from years of marching across Anatolia and under the shadow of the Hindu Kush, smell not just wealth, but reckoning. He enters the gates unopposed. The satrap bows his head and surrenders. The garrison melts into the hills. For 3 months, the Macedonians camp amid splendor, audience halls echoing with laughter, gardens where roses defy the cold. But beneath the calm, gears are turning. Scouts report Darius rallying in the east. Whispers of rebellion stir in Bactria. Leave the treasure, and it mocks him. Destroy it, and the system breaks. This is not madness. It is accounting, cold and deliberate. The Persians built their empire on satraps and tribute, a web stretching from the Nile to the Indus. Alexander intends to burn the ledger, scatter the threads, and weave his own. Persepolis must fall not because it resists, but because it endures. Its flames will answer the Acropolis, closing a century-long circle of vengeance. And in that closing, the human cost will be written on bodies. Alexander was not forged in fire. He was tempered by it from the cradle. Born in Pella in 356 BCE, under a sky darkened by an eclipse, his mother Olympias claimed Zeus himself had fathered him. Philip, the bulldog king, hammered Macedonia from tribal backwater into the spear point of Greece. Home was no sanctuary. Olympias, and a pirate queen viewed as a witch by Macedonian elites, clashed with Philip's other wives, her son the prize in their quiet wars. At 12, Alexander tamed Bucephalus, the black stallion no one else could ride, whispering to the animal's fear of shadows until terror bent into trust. That horse would carry him through dust and blood to the edge of the world. Aristotle tutored him at Mieza, 3 years beneath oak trees, steeped in Homer's rage, Plato's ideals, and the ethics of rule. But Alexander listened hardest to the lesson of Achilles. Glory is seized, not granted. War came early. At 16, he charged at Chaeronea, tasting command and its consequences. At 20, after Philip was murdered amid theater shadows, Alexander was crowned king. Rivals were purged with surgical precision. Olympias's hand was suspected, never proven. The message was clear. Then Thebes rebelled, dreaming of Spartan aid. Alexander answered by leveling the city, 6,000 dead, 30,000 sold into slavery. Only the poet Pindar's house was spared, a nod to the muses. Mercy was not the point. Oblivion was. Eastward, Darius tested him. Vast armies, shimmering with wealth. Alexander flanked, broke them, and claimed the Persian king's tent. Purple robes, gold chariots, and Darius's family. When the queen mother prostrated herself before the wrong man, Alexander lifted her gently. Mother, he called her. Kindness or calculation, it won him legitimacy. But cracks showed. Old generals questioned the endless push east. One died by poison in 330, the same year Persepolis would burn. Loyalty frayed under ambition's weight. By the time Alexander reached the Persian gates, he was no longer a prodigy. He was the machine made flesh. The pass was narrow, stone-walled, a Thermopylae in reverse. Ariobarzanes, satrap of Persis, held it with 15,000 men. Alexander's frontal assault bled Macedonian blood. Companion cavalry fell in the rain, paths turning to mud. So he feigned retreat, bribed a local herdsman to guide a flanking force over goat tracks under a moonless sky. At dawn, steel struck from behind. The Persian line shattered. Ariobarzanes fled to his death. Persepolis lay open. Alexander paused at the foot of the terrace. Bucephalus snorted mist into the cold air. This was no ordinary city. This was culmination. The heart he would tear out to steal its beat. Aristotle's logic and Philip's iron now demanded payment. What came next would not begin with triumph's roar. It would begin with the quiet grind of gears, turning splendor into slag. Winter's grip loosened as spring crept in, but the air over Persepolis remained heavy, laced with jasmine from hidden courtyards and the faint metallic taste of fear. The terrace sprawled like a god's hand pressed into the earth. 50 acres of limestone platforms, stairways wide as rivers, flanked by lamassu, whose curled beards seemed to smoke in the shifting light. At its crown rose the Apadana Hall, where Persian kings once welcomed the world with wine and ritual. Now it echoed with foreign boots. Alexander quartered himself in Xerxes' palace. Ivory-paneled walls glimmered with lapis inlay. Mosaics of lions chasing prey glinted beneath torchlight. Below, nearly 30,000 soldiers, Macedonians, Thessalians, Thracians, Greeks, spilled into the lower town. Their tents bloomed across the plain like a rash. Persepolis' inhabitants, perhaps 20,000 souls, had traded submission for survival. Merchants kept stalls stocked with saffron and silk. Fire priests murmured prayers to Ahura Mazda as sacred flames flickered low. Among them lived Sarah, daughter of a minor noble from the empire's heartland. 20 summers had softened her features. Her eyes were dark as polished onyx. Her hair was braided and threaded with pearls, keepsakes from a mother lost to fever. She served in the women's quarters, a wing veined with fountains and rosewater pools, where attendants wove tapestries celebrating conquests long past. Sarah's days blurred into ritual, dawn ablutions and milk-scented steam, afternoons grinding pistachios for sweets no one truly tasted anymore. At night, she hummed old hymns while folding linens, her fingers tracing embroidered lions meant to guard the realm. She dreamed of letters from her brother in Susa, of laughter echoing in safer halls, of marriage whispers once spoken by a Babylonian scribe before war silenced them. She sketched birds on scraps of parchment, wings spread wide, longing for skies beyond the terrace. She was no queen, no symbol, just a thread in the weave, unseen yet strong. Tension coiled like a drawn bowstring. In lamplit councils, Alexander listened as Parmenion, old and scarred, urged caution. Fortify the city, hold the gold, use it against Darius's ghost in the east. But Alexander paced instead, maps spread before him, gaze fixed beyond the horizon. The vaults overflowed, bullion stacked to the ceiling, gems glittering like fallen stars. His men were unpaid, restless, hungry in ways coin alone could not satisfy. Whispers spread. Greeks demanded fire for Athens. Symposia stretched long into the night. Wine from Chios flowed dark and prophetic. Among the officers moved Thais, an Athenian courtesan with honeyed words and flint-edged eyes. She spoke of Xerxes' arrogance, of temples burned, of women dragged away in chains. "Let us repay them," she toasted, cup raised high. Alexander laughed, but something hardened behind his eyes. Sarah heard the rumors filter into the women's wing. Guards grew lax, their tongues loosened by Macedonian silver. One evening, as the equinox neared, a captain broad as a bull staggered to the gate, beard braided with stolen trinkets. "The king demands tribute," he slurred, eyes roaming. Elders stepped forward, veils drawn tight. The demand sharpened. Jewels, linens, and women offered as gifts to seal peace. Refusal came softly, fiercely. Old Miriam, Sarah's handmaiden, planted herself before the door. "We serve the sun and the sacred fire," she said, "not foreign spears." The captain's face twisted. Rage, lust, or both. Blows followed. The gate splintered. Chaos bloomed. Silk tore. Screams threaded the air. Sarah ran. She ducked into an alcove, heart hammering, clutching a shard of mirror that caught the first torch's glare. What followed blurred. Hands rough as stone. Breath hot with wine. The world collapsing into violation's narrow vice. No blades flashed. Just the slow theft of self. When dawn crept in, bodies lay strewn like broken offerings. The women's wing, once sanctuary, was a wound. Sarah curled amid the shards, palm bleeding where glass bit deep. The pain anchored her. It proved she was still real. Word spread fast. By noon, the terrace buzzed with boasting soldiers and wailing elders. Alexander heard it in council. His face did not harden with outrage. It remained unreadable. "Victors take what they claim," he said, turning back to his maps. Hephaestion lingered, urging mercy. Thais's eyes gleamed elsewhere. This was not about Sarah. Her name vanished into ledgers. This was the system at work. Conquest's logic, where bodies buy loyalty, gold funds the next march, and women become currency. Historians would later count talents and seals, silent on souls. Yet the echo lingers still, whenever armies secure peace through the same cold math. But that was not the worst of it. As April blooms opened, the machine accelerated. Shift the lens now to the lower town, to a mid-ranking captain named Eudoxus. Thracian-born, scarred, and ambitious, he was no confidant of kings, just a cog. His task was inventory. Tribute collected, resistance logged, numbers sent up the chain. Satrap to general, general to king. Incentives gleamed. A share of silver for diligence, punishment for delay. At dawn, Eudoxus rode out with 50 horsemen to villages along the plain. "Tribute," he barked at headmen, eyes lingering on granaries, herds, and daughters veiled in doorways. The pattern spread quickly. Hamlets emptied under equinox moons. Men conscripted or killed. Women herded into wagons for camp followers. Fear did most of the work. Everyone remembered Thebes. Eudoxus tallied clean numbers. 200 souls relocated here. 100 there. Roads east demanded labor. His cut bought polished armor and a girl taken from Persepolis to warm his bedroll. Reports climbed upward. Alexander nodded over wine. The machinery hummed. Satraps in Media raised levies to preempt unrest. Rebels in Bactria paused, weighing the cost. Behind the numbers were cold hearths and silent looms. A potter's kiln went dark. A widow clutched shattered bowls. Blue-dyed threads tangled on an abandoned frame like bruised sky. One moment lingered. On a hillside shrine, a veiled priestess barred Eudoxus's path, staff raised. "The fire sees all," she spat. His men laughed. Torches fell. The shrine bloomed orange. Her silhouette vanished in flame. The report read, "Resistance neutralized." That night, a Macedonian lyre player strummed beside a captured fountain. A Persian boy, spared for his voice, sang of lions and reeds. Beauty persisted amid the grind, a dark joke of empire. By then, the shift had reached the palace itself. The system scaled upward, devouring roots as well as crowns. Eudoxus dreamed of endless gears turning on women's cries. At dawn, new orders arrived. Prepare the palace. The machine, insatiable, was about to turn inward. May heat baked the terrace until the limestone seemed to breathe. Dust devils danced across the platforms like bad omens. Inside the palace, Alexander's symposia swelled into excess. Storms of Chian wine and Ionian flutes. Officers sprawled on Persian rugs, thick as sin. Thais moved among them, flame-haired, her gown sheer as smoke, her voice a siren's call. "For Athens!" she cried, lifting a torch. Her eyes locked on Alexander's. He rose unsteady. The halls darkened as shadows leapt along the walls like hunting hounds. Cedar beams in Xerxes' palace released their fragrance as the first flames kissed them. Murals of immortals fed the fire. Gold leaf curled and blackened. The roar drowned screams from below, where looters surged unchecked. Time stretched, syrup slow. A beam groaned and fell in a long, terrible arc. Sparks burst like newborn stars. A maiden's veil ignited mid-flight, her shadow fleeing toward the gates. Heat blistered skin. Smoke clawed lungs like grave soil. Ivory melted, its acrid sweetness mixing with sweat and fear. Alexander stood on the stairs, torch in hand. Hephaestion hovered at his side. For a breath, regret flickered, or triumph. Then the Apadana caught. Its columns cracked like thunder as gods fell. The fire crested not in gore, but in scale, a pyre for an age. Thousands fled. Attendants clutched infants. Nobles' chariots shattered on the stairs. No tally survives, only whispers. Tens of thousands touched by the blaze. Women herded to camps. Court virgins parceled as concubines, their purity a victor's jest. Alcoves emptied, lineages snapped like reeds. Sarah, if she stirred from stupor, saw it through haze, flames devouring her birds, the women's wing collapsing into orange ruin. The mirror shard slipped from her hand as the palace roared. And yet, amid the overreach, a hairline crack appeared. Deep in the vaults, a tablet survived. Clay seals hardened by fire, not destroyed by it. Persepolis' fortification archive, thousands of contracts tallying grain, labor, rations for the king's women, outlasted the blaze. The machine's records mocked the eraser. Alexander turned away, face ashen. Hephaestion murmured of excess. Resistance did not rise with swords, but with silence. A maid's unyielding stare as chains clicked. A noble's curse spat into flame. The system bent. It did not break, but doubt seeded the ranks. Soldiers whispered of ghosts in the glow, of women's eyes haunting their sleep. By dawn, the fire died to embers. Persepolis lay a husk beneath a grieving sky. That summer, Alexander marched east. Bactrian winds scoured ash from his cloak. Fate caught him quickly. Fever in Babylon, 323 BCE, 32 years old. Undone not by blade, but by bodies, excess, betrayal. His empire fractured overnight. Ptolemy to Egypt, Seleucus to Syria, the Diadochi carving his dream to bone. The women paid on. The queen mother, Sisygambis, spared and honored, starved herself in grief when news came. Statera, wed to Alexander at Susa, was murdered in the wars that followed. Countless others, names like Sarah's, vanished into ledgers, sold in Greek markets, scattered to villages, birthing bloodlines that blurred the empire's edge. Power shifted. Satraps crowned themselves kings. Greek cities Persianized even as Persian lands Hellenized. Libraries swelled. Alexandria hoarded scrolls saved from older worlds, even as Persepolis' pyre warned of cultural erasure. The treasure Alexander hauled, 20,000 mules groaning, funded the very fusion he had torched. Macedonian spears married to Bactrian brides, a mongrel empire from mongrel seed. Persepolis slept beneath rubble. Jackals howled among fallen columns, calling Xerxes' name into the dark. Centuries passed. True light came in 1931, when Ernst Herzfeld, a German archaeologist with falcon eyes, walked the silent terrace. Backed by the Oriental Institute of Chicago, he brushed dust from the Apadana stairs and revealed friezes frozen mid-procession, Medes with bows, Ionians with fish, no gold, no ghosts, only stone whispering unity Alexander had deemed an enemy. By 1934, excavations deepened. Vaults yielded tens of thousands of clay tablets, contracts from Darius's scribes tallying rations for workers and the king's women. Herzfeld, chain-smoking among shards, pieced together lives extinguished by flame. A tablet named Attendance, echoes of Sarah's world, breathing again. In 1979, UNESCO crowned the ruins World Heritage, barriers raised against time's thieves. Today, a shard rests in your hand, cool, etched with a queen's seal. Herzfeld died in exile in 1948, chased from Europe by another war machine, but his work proved the erasure incomplete. Systems leave bones. Bones speak. Why does it matter? This ash 2 millennia cold. Because the blueprint persists. Modern sieges burn cities not from ancient grudges, but strategic denial. Treasuries torched, quarters secured. Women used as collateral in cold calculus. This is not an echo. It is a design. Persepolis teaches that power is brittle. Machines devour their makers. Cracks form where memory seeps through. Resistance is not always a blade. Sometimes it is a tablet that survives, a trowel in patient hands, a name rescued from dust. Human nature bends. It does not fully break. Return to the alcove. The flames are gone. The terrace stands, scarred but upright. Lions on the stairs gaze east as they always have. Sarah, if she lived, may have slipped her chains, vanished to a village where roses still bloomed. Her birds flew on, if only in the mind. The machine stalled in Babylon's fever dreams, yet its echoes whisper in our wars and our ledgers. 50,000 shadows were meant to vanish. Royal daughters and hearthkeepers erased by Conquest's math. They did not. Clay tablets keep their tallies. Friezes carry their processions. Archaeologists pulled them back into the light. And now they are here with you, because you chose to listen. See in their gaze the cost of crowns. See the quiet fire of those who endure. If this story stirred something, hold it. Speak it. Memory is a stubborn weed. It roots in ruin. Breathe. Let silence fall. The story survives in the hearing.